Welcome to the Spiritual Forum, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. I have just a couple things to remind you of. Again, the retreat at Unity Village, the Whole Planet Spirituality Retreat. And that's going to be October the 19th to the 22nd. You can find out more about that at thespiritualforum.org/retreat. And many of you know I'm on YouTube. I'm starting to get a bigger YouTube following. So if you're there, please subscribe. And if you are an Apple, please rate, review, all of that good stuff. And as I've said on the last 10 or so podcasts, I am a 100% donation-based podcast. And so that's how this one gets funded, at least until I have to resort to advertising. But I like this.
Yeah.
I like the uninterrupted podcast. So thank you, everyone who's donated. And if you're even considering it, I'd appreciate if you just push that button just a little bit. From a few people will help a lot. So thank you so much. And let me introduce my guest today. Today, I have Carmen Turner Schott. She was born with intuitive abilities that she inherited from her maternal grandmother. At the age of 16, she had a supernatural experience and began studying astrology, metaphysics, and Edgar Cayce material. Today, she's a licensed clinical social worker, psychological astrologer, author, certified Reiki master energy healer, quantum healing hypnosis practitioner, and Akashic Records international consultant. She's also an avid dream researcher. Carmen brings her knowledge of astrology together with all these multiple modalities to help people with healing and psychological processing. Her goal is to share the love of astrology and make it understandable on a practical level to help people see what a powerful psychological tool astrology can be. She's the author of 9 books on astrology and healing, including her most recent, Phoenixes and Angels, Mastering the 8th and 12th Astrological Houses. And that's what we're probably going to be focusing our conversation on today. Welcome, Carmen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. I'm excited to talk to you
Thank you.
about Phoenixes and Angels. I'm very, very attracted to the whole Phoenix symbol. So we'll probably learn more
Yes,
about that. But before we get into your book and your astrological modalities, sorry, I've got this cat right.
my dog, as she
I'd like
might
to
hear
hear
my
your.
dog. Yeah. Hopefully she
Okay, we
doesn't
got
bark.
we got a menagerie here. We got a
Yes,
menagerie.
yes,
So I always like to start with telling me your story. So if you would mind just
yes,
telling your spiritual story. I know I just barely touched this experience you had when you were a child. I know you can go into that
yes.
and tell us how you got to where you are today.
Sure, sure. So, well, when I was little, I was always very imaginative and just very empathic, and sensitive. And I always had to have the nightlight on, and I was afraid of the dark, and I would dream. And apparently, I was a sleepwalker. I don't really remember a lot of that, but my mother said I would sleepwalk, and they would wake me up. I'd do it at the house and hotels, and I wouldn't know. I'd be acting out dreams, and so I was always just very, very much a vivid dreamer. And so I was always writing my dreams down. And then in high school, I always felt different from everyone. And I was just very sensitive and intuitive, and I would kind of know things, and I didn't know why. And I was always just very spiritual. I believed in angels, and I was just kind of born with a belief in a higher power. And I loved, learning about angels and all these things. So in high school, I had lost a friend through an accidental shooting, and it was a really big thing in our town. It was really devastating. It was the first person I ever knew that died, and that really changed me, and really got me in touch with the eighth house, which at the time I didn't know astrology, and I didn't know I had a lot of eighth house planets, which is Phoenix energy and death and rebirth and healing and all these things. So I had that loss that really changed me. And that same year, I was a senior in high school, and I played basketball. And I came back from a game one night, and I went to bed, and I always had to have my bed facing the door with the door open and a nightlight on in the bathroom. And our house was small, so my parents' room was right across from mine. They could see into my door. Well, my brother and dad were out of town on a fishing trip. I remember, and it was just me and my mother. And I woke up, I went to bed normally, woke up in the middle of the night and looked in my doorway, and I saw a glowing ball of light about bigger than a softball. And it was translucent, yellow, white, looked like water, but it was yellowy white. And it was floating there. And I kept opening my eyes, closing them, thinking, am I sleeping? Am I dreaming? No, I'm awake. And I was scared because it was the unknown. And so I tried to yell, and I had no voice. I couldn't move. I was frozen. So I was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't yell. I couldn't get up or anything. And I laid there and watched it forever. And the only thing I had control of it was my mind. And I kept praying, please don't have it come in my room. Because I was 16, I was afraid. And now I hit myself and wish I, wouldn't have been so afraid, but I couldn't go over to it anyway because I couldn't move. But eventually it released me is the only way I know how to describe it. Or I was able to yell for my mother and said, look in my doorway. And she yelled back. I said, do you see it? Yes. And then we were yelling back and forth, and it took off, came right back in my door sill, but it never came in my room. And I said, what is it? She said, I don't know. She goes, maybe it's a lightning bug. Maybe someone's shining a flashlight in your window. I'm like, no, it has four. And my mother, she was such a skeptic, but she saw this thing, and she'll tell to this day, we just talked about it Sunday when I went to visit them in Rollin. And she said, I saw it. She told my dad it was there. And so she finally saw something that I had experienced. So I had a witness, so to speak. So the next day, she's like, I don't know what that was. And I got obsessed with learning about, the pyramids and orbs and angels and spirit guides. And I was reading all these books. And I went to this little bookstore in St. Louis. I know you were born there, called Mystic Valley, that had been around since the 70s. I mean, I had never really been in there, but I knew, it was there. So we went there one week, and I went in and I was looking around, and I got a little astrology book, and it was about Virgo, which is my sun sign. And I read it, and it was so much like my personality. And I was interested in psychology. I wanted to major in that. And I thought, oh my gosh, why is this so accurate? So I just started teaching myself astrology at age 16, 17, started doing charts by hand. Back in those days, we didn't have computers. So you had to do the ruler and know the symbols and draw them and the aspects. And I don't know how I did it, looking up longitude. I did that in the 90s. And then I became like doing full-time consultations for fun in the St. Louis area when I was 19 through college for people at the St. Louis Bread Company. I'd meet students. I would send emails out at WashU, and people would meet me, and I would do their chart. And I started seeing these patterns and seeing how accurate it was and how I could use it as a tool, as a psychological tool, really, to help people. And it became my passion. And so I started a website. I used to be called the Astrological Self-Awareness Center. Then I changed it to Deep Soul Divers Astrology. And it's been my research, really surrounded around trauma, healing, transformation, spiritual gifts. And I started researching that a lot of people that I did charts for that had 8th and 12th house planets had these spiritual abilities, and they didn't understand why. And they felt very different from everyone in their life, just like I did. And I started realizing, wow, I'm not the only one out there. There's people like me. And so I started collecting research, and I've been researching the 8th and 12th houses for 30 years now. And I've wrote, I self-published some books about the 8th house, and I have a 12th house book as well called The Mysteries of 12th House Fallen Angels that came out last summer. But this year I decided to put both houses together and call it Phoenixes and Angels, and really want to share client stories. And people from all over the world have emailed me from my articles. And that's kind of what started my research and my writing is realizing, wow, this is helping people. And I want to do videos. I want to write. I want to do more to help people with planets in the 8th and 12th. And also what makes someone an angel, what makes someone a phoenix. A lot of times people ask me that. Well, what makes someone an angel is if you have the sun, moon, or 3 or more planets in the 12th house. And if you have a lot of Pisces in your chart, Pisces sun, Pisces moon, Pisces rising, I also consider you an angel. That means you have those 12th house ability, dreaming, intuition, empathic abilities, right? Interested in astrology and healing and helping people. And so I call them angels because it's like they live in the mystical realm. Like they have one foot in the spiritual, one foot in the practical, and they have to learn to have boundaries to protect their energy and to be able to be in the real world. They can't escape and hide away. They have to go out in the real world. So it's hard, it's kind of like they fell to earth and they're like, what am I doing here, right? And I don't belong here. I know I'm a soul. They tell me this, right? They know they're not a body. And I'm like, you're an angel. That's why. And so it's kind of neat. And then the 8th house is the house of ruled by Scorpio, and it's very powerful energy, and it's the house of death, loss, rebirth, healing, trauma, transformation, all these very deep mystical things, secrets, right? Search other people's resources, inheritance, sacrifice, all these very deep and transforming things, emotionally. And so when planets are there, the sun, moon, or more than 3 planets, or you have a lot of Scorpio in your chart, could be Scorpio, sun, moon, or rising. I call them phoenixes because they tell me that throughout their life, they go through these emotional, mental, physical rebirths where they completely wake up and they're a different person. And this kind of happens throughout their life, right? And they're phoenixes. They rise from the ashes stronger and more resilient. And that's why I call the 8th house the most resilient house in our birth chart.
Interesting. Gosh, thank you so much. There's a lot, and I want to pull out a
Yeah,
few things, but I
sure.
have to say that I told you I have a kind of an affinity for the phoenix, and sometimes I use
Hmm.
that as a personal symbol, not ever having known
Yeah,
that this eighth house thing. I mean, it's all brand new to me that the eighth house
sure.
is this phoenix.
Yes.
And as I was reading your book, I, I learned that, like you said, it's associated with death and transformation. And I didn't really identify with the death part, but then I started thinking today, it's like I, I was born into grief. Like I was born into a family that was grieving. My
Oh,
paternal grandparents and my father's brother passed, a year or two before I was born. And
wow.
so I was
Wow.
born into grief and I didn't at all, but uh, I know that it was impactful in my own family. And then I
Yes.
had 2 miscarriages after me. And so, I was young, but there was death there. But it was again, if I were to say, did I have death in my life as a child? I would say no. But then when I look at it, it kind of showed a different way. And then the
Yeah.
other thing that
Sure.
I really, really identify with is the phoenix in terms of transformation and
Mhm.
this waking
Yeah.
up as a new person. I can definitely say that I don't feel like I wake up as a new person, but I could go back and look at 10-year segments of my life and say, "That was
Yeah.
this segment, and then I turned into that, and then I turned into
Yes.
that, and then I turned into that, and now I'm this." And I also
Yeah.
say that my husband says he's been married to many different women, and they've all been
Oh,
me.
yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's so 8th house. It's very it's like this energy of change and this energy of wanting to grow, and the universe kind of forces 8th house people, or Phoenix of Scorpios to start over again. It's like emotional, and what you said too, it's very interesting being born into a family where there was grief going on, and this is very much also an 8th house pattern where they were born into a family, and maybe there was a loss right before they were born, and they say that when there's a death there's often life or a birth in a family. That's kind of a thing that we see, and so that affects you as a child, as a soul when you came in, and your birth chart is the map of your soul. So when your soul chose to be born on the month, day, year, time, place, all the karma and all the situations and parents, we pick our parents and everything was set up for you to do your soul mission. And that's why we're all here in the chart. Our birth chart can show that. It's like you take a picture of the sky when you're born and we put it on a piece of paper. And it's a wheel with 12 areas. We call them houses, which are areas of life. It's like we break it into a pie, and the planets are in all of the different 12 star constellations, houses when you're born, and everyone has a unique birth chart. Even twins can have a different moon sign. It's like their emotional nature can be different. How they think, Mercury could shift into another house. There's lots of things that can change. So even twins charts are slightly different, and even though they're born pretty close apart. But some twins look alike but are very different emotionally. That's because they're maybe born 3 or 4 hours apart, or things like that. And so I love astrology because to me it's energy, and it's I've always been very sensitive to energy, and now it's I just practice when I meet people and person specifically, I'll be able to feel their energy. I'll know that they have Scorpio or Pisces and Capricorn or whatever. I feel the elements like the earth, fire, air, and water in their personality. And I'll be able to tell them. And then when I do their chart, I'm usually validated. And so it's a science. It really is when you know the energies and how it all plays out in the different traits and personality types. It's just like Myers-Briggs or, the different 12 archetypes. It goes back to ancient times, even in the Bible with the 12, sons of Jacob, the 12 disciples, each have their own personality, and that's associated with astrology as well. And so I believe there's a lot of astrology hidden throughout the Bible and in different regions through the ancient times. So there's something to it. And I believe that it's here to help us know ourselves. It's like a great tool of self-awareness and to understand other people. And then when you understand yourself and others, life gets a lot easier because then you realize, okay, they're not doing this to hurt me. This is just their personality or I know how I am and I need to have better boundaries, right? And take care of myself and attract healthy relationships or, whatever the issue is. And so we can start changing our life and for the better when we kind of know the basics of our chart.
Yeah, I'm really a big fan of lots of personality systems. I love Myers-Briggs. I'm qualified Myers-Briggs. I love the
Yes.
Enneagram. I love
Yeah.
astrology. I'm just not really adept at astrology, but I do like to kind of dig into it a little bit, and I find it very, very interesting because I like to try to understand people. So I think we should talk a little bit about how you use this 8th and 12th house knowledge to help people. And I know we've kind of gone into the 8th house. I don't know if we've gone enough into the 12th house.
Sure.
Maybe you want to expound on that a little bit too.
Sure. Sure. So the eighth and 12th both, when you have planets in there, they both have a similar, they share common things. So they both kind of rule secrets. They both are hidden. So if you have planets there, there's parts of yourself or personality that are kind of hidden from people that you hide. So the 12th house are secrets that you hide from yourself. Illusion, delusion. You don't see things clearly because it's Neptune, Pisces energy, right? That's the secrets are, you're just not aware of it. Where the eighth house are secrets that that you see and observe and perceive because you're intuitive, but people around you might deny it. And so you kind of see the truth. So the energy
Mm.
kind of comes out a little different if you think of Pisces and Scorpio. They're both water signs. They both rule, they rule these houses. So they have a little bit of a different energy, right? Scorpio's more intense, more powerful, more, just very control and power kind of an energy, very powerful. Where Pisces is more mystical energy, spiritual, artistic, creative. And so it's a lighter energy. So the 12th house also rules escapism. It also is associated with, being a nun, a monk, a rabbi, a priest, being in a spiritual order where everyone dresses alike, where you're away from the real world, pursuing a spiritual path. So the 12th house is the house of cosmic consciousness, finding your oneness with God, meditation, all of these very deep things that help you find out why you're here and that you're a soul. And the 12th house is so powerful because it's the house of service, of spiritual service. So when you have planets there, you have to help people because that's part of your destiny. And as long as you do so, you have a lot of blessings. And both of these houses come with challenges because there's a little bit of pain and suffering. And that's why a lot of the old books, when I was learning astrology, they were scary because there wasn't a lot of positive stuff in these books about having planets in the 8th and 12th. And I was like, wow, this is scary, right? I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, there has to be more to this. So in astrology, a lot of people are afraid of the 12th and 8th house. And so that's kind of what got me wanting to use these houses to help people because I knew what I read was not helpful. And I had an astrology reading when I was 19. And they told me this, that your sun is in the 12th house. Anything you put before God will get taken away from you. Quote. And I was like, wow. And I'm like, okay, how do you, but they didn't give me any tips or skills to understand what that meant. And I realized I always kind of put relationships and having a partner or other people, but like that was my thing, to have a relationship. And I had a lot of loss and pain and heartache through love when I was younger. And that was meant to happen because I had Venus in the 12th house and my son and my main identity. So I had to go through that and really realize that I'm here to be spiritual and I'm here to have a relationship with a higher power. So when I finally learned that, everything got easier. But I meet so many people that would tell me, I'm idealistic. I'm looking for a soulmate, all these things. And I learned the hard way on all that. Like, we have to love ourselves when you have 12th house planets. You have to be your own soulmate. Like, because our standard's so high, no human being can ever fulfill you and love you like you love yourself and that God can love you, right? So that's a lesson that 12th house people, that's why I call them angels, because it reminds me of that movie with Nicolas Cage, City of Angels, where he was an angel and he decided to fall and become human. And when he did that, everything was painful. I mean, she passed away. He became he left being an angel for a relationship, and then she died. And then he was hurting because he was in a body, and he kind of made a mistake, right? Giving up his angel wings. So, 12th house people have to balance the spiritual and the practical world, and they have to learn to live in the real world and to pay bills and do all these things that they don't really want to do. They rather, read and be mystical and meditate and learn spiritual things and have peace and harmony. But they have to have a tough skin and develop those boundaries so they can do what their soul mission is, which is to help people. And so the 12th house rules dreams, fleet. That's why most 12th house people, I would say out of 1,000 charts, if I randomly selected 1,000 12th house people's charts, 999, almost all of them would have told me they had a dream that happened in their life at least once. They dreamed of the future. And they're dreamers. They get psychic information through their dreams. I've done it my whole life. I dream about what's going to come. And I dreamed about both my grandmothers before they passed away. They came in my dream, and I knew when I woke up that they were gonna pass away. And so it kind of prepares you for that. And I thought, wow, I'm the only one that does this. No. So I started a 12th house astrology group on Facebook when Facebook was brand new, and an 8th house astrology group. And they've been around since the beginning, since like 2010. And I have like 15,000 members, people from all over the world. And they share the same stories. They dreamed of their grandparent or their mother or father before they passed. They dreamed of major life, changes in the world, like 9/11, the tsunami, earthquakes. And this is a common pattern of having, planets in the 12th house and spiritual abilities. They all have spiritual gifts. Some of them aura, some of them feel energy. They attract people that have pain and trauma, and then they're able to help them. And then the 8th house is similar. It rules things associated with the dead. So debts, other people's resources, other people's money, things that people sacrifice for you financially. It could also be spiritual inheritance. Maybe I find, if the moon is there, you might inherit a spiritual gift from the maternal side. Or if the sun is there, you might inherit a spiritual gift from the parental, the father side. But often there is some type of a debt where you pay debts and taxes, all those things that have to do with people when they pass. Paying for funeral, inheriting land. I mean, this is really interesting too. The 8th house, it rules your marriage and partner's money. Okay. And so this happened to me. I have a lot of planets in the 8th, my moon, my Jupiter, my Chiron, and I always wondered, I never inherited any money yet, or anything, but my husband's father passed away unexpectedly a couple years ago, and they had a farm in Iowa. And we had a lot of debts we had to pay off to keep the land and all these things. And it all played out like, wow, this is my 8th house. And now my husband and his brother own the land. Their names are on it. And now we have this property. But, this is the kind of way the 8th house plays out. And then also people help you. You have like benefactors. that you never knew that might help you do, maybe not money, but they help you in some way with your spiritual path or, all these different things.
Okay, so I've got a question. I did all of my charts
Mhm,
in my family, and I looked at who's got the 8th house, who's got planets in the 12th house, and part of me was like, that doesn't apply though, or that doesn't apply to so and so, or that does apply to so and
mhm,
so. And so, what I'm kind of wondering is, if let's say, for example, somebody who has planets in the 12th house,
mhm.
not really seeing the angel thing, I'm not really seeing the dreams, and I'm not seeing the cosmic consciousness and the meditation and being aware of
It
your path and all. What would you say is going on there?
Well, let me ask you this, what planets are they? Because that's gonna matter.
Oh, okay, oh gosh, I'd have to go look.
Yeah, because
I'd have to go look,
because
yeah, 'cause I d yeah,
so
yeah.
le
Alright,
so
go
let me
ahead.
tell you let me ask you this, some of the more challenging aspects of the 12th house might be what you see in some people. So let me touch on that. I didn't touch on that. Addiction. Addiction is a 12th house thing. So it's because of that need to escape from the world. There are a lot of 12th house people that have alcohol issues. Okay, this is through my research. Or any kind of anything that you use to numb yourself to escape from feeling things. Okay. It could be food, it could be work addiction, it could be exercise addiction, it could be relationships and love, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, right? Smoking. It could be a lot of things. So there's a pattern there where people have to be careful about addiction. And there's also a pattern where people have depression or some type of mental struggles, okay, with anxiety. That also rules the 12th house. It rules hospitals, asylums. These are the scary things about the 12th house. But it also, right, and it also rules feeling like a victim. This is the negative side of the 12th house. That 12th house planets can sometimes make people feel like everyone's out to get them and they may not trust their intuition depending on what planet is there. So I guarantee if it's the sun or moon, they would resonate with the angel energy. But if it's like Mercury, that would mean that their mind is a very deep and they might keep their thoughts private and their communication might be secretive. They may not be able to communicate well what they really feel because everything's turned inward when planets are in the 12th house. So there's different ways to look at each planet. It would really depend on what planet is there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would think that the astrological chart is also kinda complicated, so
Yeah.
you've got all of these different signs and placements and all that are interacting,
Yeah.
or I shouldn't say interacting, but having an impact.
Yeah.
And
It could be blocked. There
yeah,
could
yeah.
be a square, which is aspect between planets. A square means that the one planet's winning and the other is blocked. So they
Oh,
may have
okay.
a square going on with Saturn or something that is blocking that 12th house spiritual side. Could be. I'd have to
Yeah.
see the whole
Okay.
chart because you're right that you got to look at everything and then it depends. But
Yeah, that's what I was thinking because I know there's times where I have my chart read
sure,
and it's like, well, that jives, that doesn't, or that
yeah,
doesn't. But I think there's this whole composite, where you
yes,
look at every planet and every house and how they're positioned and all
yes,
of that. And so, the general paragraphs don't always apply because all these forces are
sure,
kind of interacting. So let's talk about how this helps people. I would imagine if you were a person that had a lot of transformation in your life or a lot of death and rebirth in your life, and you're like, what the heck is happening in my life?
yes,
That it could be helpful to go, well, this is part of your chart.
yes.
But how else do you help? How does this help? And how do you guide people where they have planets in the 8th or the 12th house?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing is, with my groups and when I do charts for people, I tend to just attract people that have planets in these houses, because they've seen my books and things. And what I do is it validates their life experience. So a lot of them, especially eighth house people, they do good in crisis situations. They attract people that have problems and that want to share everything with them, right? And tell them all their secrets and they just listen and they help. But they like, why what is it about me and my energy that people come up in me in the grocery store? This is what they tell me. And and people will share this with me, and I'm like, let me look at your chart because I use tropical placiduous. Okay, there's different house systems. So some people use whole sign. To me, that's not as accurate as placiduous house system. So I got to make sure people have done their chart a certain way, and then I do it, and I use a different system, and it changes the placement of the houses, right? But when I meet them, I'm like, listen, this is what I see, and I know nothing about them, and they're like, that happened to me. And I'm like, okay. And then I also can look at transits. We want to see a transit chart, which is all the planets are transiting our birth chart and they're affecting all of our areas of life. And we all have like a unique transit chart. So it's like we take a picture of the sky right now and we put it on top of your birth chart. And I can see what's going on. And if you have 8th and 12th house transits of major planets, there's going to be things going on. Okay. It's going to trigger things like if Pluto goes into the 4th house. I've always seen that there's usually a death of a loved one. There's a move. The career is affected as well because we always, in astrology, it's always about the polar opposite, the second house and 10th, 8th house. And, every house, every sign has a polar opposite that we have to look at, that's affected too. But no, I use it to help them validate their experience, explain to them why they went through certain hard things that they went through and that it was for a reason. And a lot of them already kind of know that because these really difficult life situations that 8th house and 12th house people go through, they become healers. They become spiritual. It awakens them to their spiritual gifts. And then almost all of them are doing spiritual work. I very rarely, maybe a handful that are doing spiritual work that have planets in the 8th and 12th houses or that are interested in these things or have a belief or open-mindedness to them. They may not be an astrologer, but they think it's neat and they're interested in it. They may not be a Reiki master, but they're interested in, in healing and maybe alternative medicine, things like that. So they may not pursue it as a career, but a lot of them do. They become, intuitive and they use these different gifts. And a lot of them go into counseling, social work, medicine, these different fields. And a lot of them do radio shows and podcasts. I've been on a lot of podcasts that are like supernatural podcasts, right? And I do their chart and I laugh their 8th and 12th house, sun and moon, and the same as my chart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is interesting. So there's a belief in these strange mystical things or an interest. And so then
Yeah.
they realize, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not weird. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not weird. This is your chart. And these are your gifts. These are things you can do to heal. And also how astrology can help. Just knowing the basics of astrology, your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising. Those are what we call the top 3. That's really important because the sun's your main identity. The moon is your inner nature, your emotional nature, how you love, how you find emotional fulfillment, happiness, where you find comfort and stability. And then the rising sign is how you relate to stress and how people perceive you and how you physically look. And so all these things, just knowing the basics can help you heal by tapping into your strengths. Like if you're an Aries, tapping into your courage, into your anger, your rage can help you overcome challenge. Because Aries like to act. They like to keep going and they get over things quickly. They're resilient. Where a Taurus is going to hold on to the past more and it's going to take them a little longer to heal because they're very nostalgic and they don't like change. They like stability. And so they need to learn to let go and to forgive and to embrace new things. That's how they heal. So each sign kind of has these basic opposite natures that they can tap into to heal and to embrace change and to become stronger, which I call resiliency. Because, when you you don't just become resilient, you become resilient when you go through something hard. And I had that happen in my life several times. And I thought, wow, I look back and I never thought I was going to get through these things. It was just really hard emotionally, but I did. And what helped me was having to tap in and utilize the things that help a Virgo because I don't like change. Earth signs don't like change. Virgos like to control things. We are analyzers. We're communicators, but we overthink and we worry. So I had to overcome worry and have more trust in the universe, right? Do positive affirmations and get away from the negative worry, because that will just keep you in this wheel, and you're never going to be able to move forward with things. And so I've used it in my own life, the basic tips, and I think that everyone really just tells me that they feel like they're not alone. When they read my 8th and 12th house books, and when they are in my groups, they know that these are gifts they have. It's not a curse. They'll say it's a blessing and a curse to have 8th and 12th house planets, because you do have to, there is loss. I will say this: most people that I know that have the sun or moon in the 8th house has lost someone close to them, not always a parent, but it could be a parent or a friend or a loved one. And that they also have a connection to the meaning of life. Like, when they're little, they tell me they lay in bed at night and think, what if I die? Where do I go? Like, there's an interest in the other side. And some of them would even wake up in the night and see someone standing at the foot of their bed when they were children. They didn't know what that was. They were afraid. That they're connected to death and spirits and the other side. That 8th house Scorpio energy is very deep, and it's connected to all those kind of experiences. And some of them tell me they're death doulas. They work in hospice. They're funeral home directors. They're in these career fields that are very much dealing with death and rebirth and healing and helping families grieve and all of these things. And they never really knew that was their 8th house till I did their chart. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is your 8th
Mhm.
house. And some of them are psychologists, working with trauma survivors. Some of them are EMTs. They like crisis. They're firefighters. They're police officers, FBI agents, because the 8th house is also about research and digging deep and solving crimes and finding the secrets and the hidden things, right? And all that stuff. So I do see a lot of people in law enforcement that have 8th house planets in Scorpio as well. But yeah, it helps people heal.
Yeah, I could see it helps people. I think it helps people
Yeah.
validate, like, who they
Yeah.
are. And I do think this kind of like, "Oh, I'm not alone," is kind of helpful. I know you mentioned a few things that really
Yeah.
resonate with me. I have 2 planets in the 8th
Yes.
house, and also my node is
Oh,
there.
yes.
So, I don't have anything in the 12th house, but that's what I've got going on
Yes.
in the 8th house. And when I worked, I mentioned that I have lots of deaths and rebirths in my own
Mhm.
life. And what I mean by that, for example, like I was an engineer.
Yeah.
That's dead to me
Yeah.
now. I completely transformed
Oh,
and did something completely different. But when I was in engineering, and when I was working in an oil refinery
wow. Wow.
in the 80s, before women were really, really there. I had women friends there, but we were the beginning wave of all
Yes.
that. And I would have people, and even when I worked in the headquarters and also worked for the refinery, I would have people all the time coming up and telling me about their
Yes.
lives, and I'd be sitting there
Yes.
listening, and people would say, "Well, it's 'cause you're a woman." No, it wasn't
No.
because I was a woman, because there were women that were coming to me. The
Yes.
secretaries would come to me,
Yes.
and I found myself in that situation all the time. I remember my boss going, "It takes you so long to get
Yes.
out from the plant,"
Yes.
like talking
Because
to too
they're
many
coming up to
people.
you. Exactly. That's your energy. And I describe it like 8th house people. This is what it is. So the 8th house is everything taboo and hidden and dark and secretive. So it's like there's a flashlight, like you light up like a flame, and your energy, it shines, and people can tell that they can share these deep taboo things with you. And it is 8th house. I was the same way, and even at work, when I had jobs as a social worker, and mortal enemies would come, like, past they come in and out of they come in my office, and they're all telling me their problems. They're asking my help. Then they walk out, and then, they're not. It was funny. I was like the open door therapist in the office, or they're telling me about their dreams, and they would come in, and I would say, "Oh, no, that's a good dream. It means this." And everybody would laugh, so they knew that I was into this. But we become the people that people share very, very personal things with, that they don't normally share. And this happens to 12th housers too, but it's a little different, because with 8th house, it's 8th house people are more listeners. where 12th house people, they want to take on that person's pain. So 12, that's why
Okay.
they're angels. And that's what gets them hurt and gets them where they feel depressed. And
Yeah.
because
I don't do
no,
that.
eighth house,
I
you
don't do
can
that.
cut, eighth house is Scorpio. Scorpios can cut people off and block and
Yeah.
unwanted things. And they can just move on and they don't take on people's karma. They're like, no, they don't do that. It's a little different
Yeah.
the way the energy, shows up. But
Yeah, I get that. I'm also somebody who can keep secrets. I
yes,
I I won't tell
that's right.
people what they've told me. And then the other thing is the kind of the preoccupation or interest in the other side. When I look at
Mhm.
when you talk about, like, lying
Mhm.
in bed at night as a child, I mean, I d I did think about death a lot. Not so much me dying, but, like, my parents
Yes.
dying or, something like what would
Yeah.
happen, and I actually, as an adult, I feel very comfortable with death,
Mhm.
even though I haven't had a lot of both my parents have died. I had a
Yeah.
niece, a highly, highly, highly Scorpio
Wow.
niece pass strangely at the age of
Wow.
26, and that was just a few years
Wow.
ago. That's a whole chart I'd like to understand.
Wow.
But this is death coming kinda later in life,
Yeah.
but I death is something that I move to my energy moves towards
Mhm.
it. I I don't feel like I recoil
Sure.
around death. I'm just very curious. I'm very comfortable being around people who are grieving
Yes.
or, the dead body doesn't bother me. I'm kind of
Sure.
interested in it.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's it.
that sounds
No,
like how too.
that's 8th house, all of that. Exactly. It we can talk about it and it doesn't make us feel uncomfortable. And that
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
we're able to. And I was talking to an astrologer and I knew he had the sun in the 8th house and I asked him, what was it like for this connection to death? Did you ever lose anyone? And he said he hadn't lost anyone close to him, but what he did do when he was a child, he dreamed about his death. And so there's
Ah,
ways that it comes in and I had a lady tell me once, you're connected to death. And I thought, wow. And I knew she didn't know astrology, but I said I am because I dream about when someone's going to go. They come in my dream. And I've had that happen and I never really told, this lady didn't know this and I realized there is something about it and I don't try to do it, I kind of really try to block it in a way, I don't pursue it.
it's information that's not help I mean, why do you want that
Yeah.
information, It's like, it's overshare,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, and I would be at a grocery store, and I remember in graduate school, and a lady came up to me and said, "My husband just died," and started telling me all these things and cried, and I went up here to get groceries about 4 months ago up in town here, and a lady was in the aisle, and she just started asking me about some ham, and then she started telling me her son had cancer, and he was not okay, and she was just opened up, and I was there an hour in the aisle just listening. And
Mm,
and 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 I just thought, yeah, it's 8th house, and she really needed support, and there's something about our energy, I think, that other 8th and 12th house people tell me that they do the same. People come up to them
mhm.
and it's amazing, and they didn't realize they had 8th house because they didn't know astrology. I'd do their chart, or I met a girl that's an author, and I did her chart. She's 8th house, stellium, and she started sharing with me, yeah, when I was little, that would happen, and people would tell me their stories, and she would know when someone was hurt. She could feel their energy, and so she never realized that was her 8th house, but I know when you start learning this, it validates, like you said, our interests and our experience
Mhm.
and all those things. It's really neat, and I love, I love helping people with planets here just to tap into their strengths and to let them know, they can do the spiritual path, but they have to be in the real world as well and balance. They're here for a reason, but very different houses, different energies, different things, but similarities, right? With secrets, just a different kind of secret. It just kind of plays out that Pisces Scorpio are very different energy traits, personality traits. But it's amazing. The stories I've heard. I mean, it's just I'm collecting some research right now on 8th house people to do an article. So I asked for people to, that want to participate. I had 5 questions and I had about 200 people email me from my group that wanted to participate. So I'm going to start looking at the charts, looking at the responses. Some of them sent me audio and just listening to them. I got teary eyed hearing their answers to the
Aw,
questions were just so. amazing, and losing their grandfather or their grandmother and how that affected them. Just really personal stories, and then it was awesome, and all of them really had the five traits, the five patterns, and had resonated with that. So I'm doing research about it to see. Once in a while, there's one or two that don't, and then I look at the chart to kind of why is that? What is different? But then when I start talking to them, they do have the pattern, really. Like like the
Okay.
12th house is it's known that sometimes you feel like you have an absent or missing parent. Okay. Could be if the sun or moon is there, it could be the father, an absent, missing father figure, even though they're in the home. They may be there, but you just never felt like you had a bond with them until you get older. That often is a pattern I see that when they get older, then they're close to their father. But when they're growing up, they feel like their father was never there. Like there was something secretive about it. Or the moon, sometimes the mother, they feel like they're the parent to the mother. So these are patterns that I see, with different placements in the 12th and 8th. And I start talking and she goes, well, no, my dad and mom are both here. And I never felt like and then she says, but when I was little, I felt like my dad really never talked to me and he was never around because he was always traveling. So it plays out in different ways where they were kind of absent, but they were in the house or they were still there, or their parents divorced, or they never knew their father or their mother, or they were adopted. A lot of them tell me they never knew they were adopted and they found out, and they always felt like they didn't belong to their family. And so there's these
Hmm.
different ways it can play out in the research. I'm collecting stories and their answers to these questions to see these different eighth house things right now. And I've already done that with the 12th house as well. And I got an article coming out next year with the Astrology magazine thing about the research on the 12th house. And so I'm really excited. I'm trying to do more quantitative research, not just anecdotal. I mean, I got all the personal stories. I know it's accurate. I know it's true, but I want to try to more scientific research on it. And so that's what I'm
Okay.
doing.
Well, it seems like the like my podcast is a spiritual forum. It seems like the spiritual people
Yeah.
generally would be in have planets in
Oh
these
yeah.
2 houses if
Yeah.
they're yeah,
Yeah.
so and then the other thing I'm kinda wondering is if somebody is like an outlier
Mhm.
and if they're not really expressing what you would expect with planets in the 8th
Mhm.
or 12th house, could we talked about how a planet could be squaring and
Mhm.
blocking it. Could it also be that they're kind of not yet stepping into their purpose?
That is exactly because really I don't want to get too complex, but in astrology, the north node of the moon is our soul mission, and the south nodes are our past lives. We're not even we don't even feel our north node until after the first Saturn return after age 30. That's when we first start feeling our soul mission pull and life changes and all these things happen to us and get us on a new path. And we're just starting moving towards the north node at age 31, really. And then by the time we have our second Saturn return, by the time people are 61, when I do their chart, they're in their north node, doing the sign and in the area of life it's in. They're in their soul mission. So they may still be stuck in that south node, because it's balance and you have to let go of the old and start moving towards your mission. And if you don't, the universe will blindside, and it does things to get you where you need to go. So I always tell people, don't worry, you're going to get there no matter what. But here are tips. These are what I want you to read all about. If you're a Cancer North Node, I want you to read all about Cancer because you're meant to be a Cancer. And if it's in the 10th house, you need to focus on a career in the public and work. If it's in the 4th house, you're meant to focus on home and family. And there's if it's in the 7th, marriage and partnership. This is your learning, right? And so they could be living in that south node still because they just haven't had enough.
Mhm.
The age, it depends on how old they are, where they're at in life, and if they've had the experiences to get them into the north node. But by the time they're 61, I guarantee they'll be doing their north node. And that, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I do think we're coming up. We've got about
Oh,
5 minutes or so,
okay.
but I think we need to share with people who may not know about all the stuff we're
Yeah,
talking about. Assuming they're still with us. Where do you recommend? I know where I get my charts
sure,
done, but where do you recommend people go if they
sure.
go like I don't know? I've got planets in the
Mhm.
in the eighth. house
Sure.
or the 12th house? How do I find out?
Yeah.
So what is your recommendation?
So so you can go to astro.com.
That's where I
Yes,
go.
astro.com, and you need your date, month, year of birth. You need your exact time of birth to have the most accurate chart. So what's on your birth certificate or baby book, etc. And you need to know the city, state, country. Now, if you don't have your time, usually we tell people to use 12 p.m., 12 noon, and it won't be completely accurate, but you'll be able to get a basic. Where's my moon sign? Where's Mercury? The basic things. But the time is critical to get an accurate chart. But you can also go to my website, carmenturnershot.com, and I have a gift, a free gift, a little report I'll send you, and you can put your information in, and I'll send you the wheel and report, and I'll be able to tell you if you have planets in the 8th and 12th house. So that pops up on my
Okay.
website, and I've been doing that for about 6 months now. And it's been fun. Give me some time. It takes me. I had like 100 requests last week, so I've been digging through, and I do it all myself with my program, and I save it and email the person directly. So I've been doing that. But you can find that out. And there's basic books out there. I have a book, Sun Signs, Houses, and Healing, that came out last year, and it's a whole basic guide. The whole introduction is about how to calculate your chart. What are the symbols? What are the signs? What do they mean? What are the houses? All the basics. And then you can read about each sun sign. It has a whole chapter dedicated to them. So, but it's a very basic beginner guide. If you want to learn the basics, I write on a very basic level to make all of this understandable. So there's other books
Okay.
out there you can get that are very basic on learn how to calculate a chart, all those. But astro.com, I talk about it in my book too, that you can go there to do the basics and what you need, things like that.
Yeah, that's where I've got all my family
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
astro.com. One last question, then I'll give you the last
Okay.
word. Do you have anything that you want to share with us astrologically about like what you see going on in the world? What we're going through right now? Is there anything that you can share with us that you see?
Yes. Right now has been a very difficult time for a lot of people. And that's because we have multiple planets are retrograde in the sky right now. And so let's talk about the end of August. Okay, this is 2023, the end of August. We had a blue moon, full moon in Pisces. We had also Mercury turned retrograde, the planet of communication. Venus was retrograde. Jupiter just went retrograde. Saturn's retrograde. Neptune's retrograde. Uranus and Pluto. So all these planets are retrograde. And what that means is they're spinning backwards in the sky. And the easiest way I explain it is the energy is blocked. And when a planet is retrograde, that energy that usually flows outwardly, normal, is turned inward. And so people they feel physically ill. They're telling me, or emotional, like they're wanting to cry, or they just feel a little bit irritable or down or low energy. That's because right now, guys, everything is retrograde. It's all going to change. Next month, Pluto goes direct. So the planet Pluto will be spinning normal, and that's going to help. But Jupiter just went retrograde until the end of December. So we have a couple months, and it's retrograde in Taurus. So what's going on is it's going to be affecting people's finances and money and your
Uh,
comfort and stability. So there might be things, you might have blessings because, Jupiter is about good luck, good fortune. But because it's backwards, you really need to know where is Jupiter in your birth chart, because that'll show how it's going to affect you. And where is Jupiter transiting in your birth chart? What house is it messing with? Mine is in the 9th house of travel and learning and foreign travel, 9th house right now. It just left my 8th house, which is a good thing. And it's, I'm interested. I'm having some good things happen with my writing and my teaching and things like that. So it could bring blessings and good luck, but it can also bring a little bit of financial things because Taurus rules money and the 2nd house and finance. And so it's in Taurus, which is going to make us think about, our bills, our owning a home, our retirement, all these things could be affected by the stock market, things that are going on in the world. So people are kind of predicting like, some struggles with homes, like maybe, the
okay.
housing market might be affected, right? There could be some
Okay.
things change with that, which, it's been booming or, the houses are like triple the price. So things might change with that by December. And so that's and
Okay.
technology might become there may be a big boom with technology, anything with technology, and that's Pluto. Pluto's getting ready to go in Aquarius for good, and it hasn't been in Aquarius fully since like the 1800s. So it kind of went in there last year, then it went back into Capricorn. Now it's, it moved in, and coming up, it's going to be in Aquarius, and that's going to be awakening with science and technology and space travel and all of these things. And it's already happening.
We've got a lot on the
Yes.
horizon. I know we've got a lot on the horizon
Yes.
technologically,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's a whole nother podcast.
Yes.
But I'm going to have to
Sure.
close, Carmen. I really appreciate you coming with me. I'll have your website and
Thank
your
you.
links to your books and everything on your podcast page. And I know we're in for a ride coming up.
Yes. I mean, AI,
We're in for a ride. Yeah,
AI,
AI,
robots,
AI. Yeah, we
robots,
talked
all
about
this
it.
stuff. It's amazing. And yeah, I'm really
It is.
it's going to be the age of Aquarius when Pluto goes
I
into
was gonna say, it is the
Aquarius.
dawning of the age of
Yes.
Aquarius. We're in it.
Yes.
We're in it, and we chose to be
That's right.
here. So, thank you, Carmen, so
Thank
much
you.
for sharing about the 8th house, the 12th house. Astro.com is where you can learn about your own
Yes.
charts. And if you want to find out if you're a phoenix or an
Yeah.
angel, you can check out Carmen's book.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And I now close the spiritual forum, but meet with me again next week for my next guest. Thank you very much.